welcome Heather. Thank you very much for joining us again on for this Breach Point event. This is something that anyone who's followed us for a little while or been in person at these events, we normally have a panel of people. We talk about what it takes to gain market access into the States and working with the US Department of Defense and all of the different challenges and opportunities that come with that. We like to get people who have done it before or people who work in that space, people based in the States, to share with Aussie founders on what that actually looks like so that we can equip them with the best amount of information. And in these formats, we like to talk to experts one-on-one and get your personal perspectives on this and insight, because it is changing all the time. So we can always be drip feeding the most relevant, up-to-date information. So this session is recorded. So if anyone misses out or has to leave any partway through this, we'll be able to catch the recording on the Beaten Zone Ventures YouTube channel. And then at the end of this also, I'll ask the best way to reach out to you, Heather, if anyone wants to reach out to you and connect further, what's going to be the best way to do that. So let's kick off. I could read your bio. It's quite long, but let's hear from you. What's your current role? And what are you doing to work on in this space?
So this is my least favorite question because it covers, what's your elevator? I'm like, if the building's 100 stories tall, I'm still won't be done. So I will go into this, but I just first want to say thank you so much. And thank you, to Steve and honestly, like Beaten Zone, as a US investor, somebody here in Silicon Valley, I live right here in Silicon Valley, like you guys have really paved a way and carved, out a really unique system. Like even the way I talk to some US investors, you guys have shaped some of that. So I'm not even being nice. That's just how it is. I just love, when I met Steve on stage, talking about, he was very kind of not weapon systems forward, but wasn't afraid of that topic. And I think it's been very interesting here in the States in the last decade about who's kind of okay with that conversation and who's not. So I just really want to say thank you guys. And thank you for creating this platform. We're in a very different situation now, both I say we, and you guys as an ally, and our countries working together just on like the state of the world right now. And I'm going to try not to cuss, but it's fucked up. So we can sorry.
And every single, and iterating, it's just changing every single day. And I think Steve mentioned, I listened to a podcast, he has to, every time we do an update, it's literally changing by the hour. So make sure we got the most up-to-date information. So being able to plug into people like yourself is super, super helpful.
It really is. And I'll do a real intro in a second, but just, even for us who sit here, whether it's in Washington, D.C. or in California or wherever, we wake up every day to new surprises and we're like, So I think consistency is one thing that, we have kind of taken for granted for a long time, and we don't even have that. So I can't even imagine the fresh hell that all of our allies are trying to deal with tariffs and with just all the stuff that, all the executive orders and the things that are going on when we just wake up one day and decide to bomb Iran. So that's a fun idea. So anyway, I think you're going to get a sense that I'm very honest and open about how I think about things. I do work very closely with our Pentagon, and I'm happy to share with you guys all, who are some very trusted folks inside there and kind of what's going on with that. But I'll step back for a second. My name's Heather Richman. I'm based here in Silicon Valley. I live on Sand Hill Road, which is very cliche. I do apologize. I can throw a shoe and hit, some large venture funds, NEA, Lightspeed, Andreessen Horowitz, Excel, like some of those guys. Clyder Perkins is down the street. So I kind of sit in the middle of it. And it was about, I've been doing defense innovation, defense tech, defense appropriations for about 27 years. I was in Washington, D.C. when 9/11 hit. I was actually working for the senator from New York. And of all the people in his office, I was the only non-New Yorker. And for some reason, I'm the one that went to New York City with him 3 days later. And I still, to this day, I don't understand why, but it's one of those things that just never leaves you. So I guess that's where my mission focus comes from. I've got more energy than anybody I know, and I am so passionate about what we're doing and just the changes that need to be happening. Fast Forward helped start something called Elemental Impact, which is a $30 million Navy initiative. I've, like I said, based here kind of in the private sector. And so as Navy was building out, they were using Hawaii as a test bed for energy innovation. We then used Alaska. So I said we participated. But my whole thing was, taking taxpayer dollars and just creating a program that's going to require more taxpayer dollars. That's not how the private sector works. So how do we actually start teaching the government how to build sustainable, self-sustaining enterprises? And so we leveraged about $2 billion in private capital while I was there. Now it's up to about $8 billion. So this idea of just using authorities that our government has, that other governments have, to create self-sustaining programs using taxpayer dollars. So that's kind of my passion. Let's see, what did I do after that? Went to work at Stanford for a while, but then we'll get back to that. We run something at Stanford called Hacking for Defense. We've launched it there about 10 years ago and run something in that program at about 70 US universities, and a couple of international universities as well. And then lastly, I joined a company called BMNT, and this is the beginning of the very annoying acronyms, but begin morning nautical twilight. So a couple of special forces rangers, commanders, actually, that when they were leaving, one was the head of the Army's Rapid Equipping Force, Pete Newell, and then Joe Felter, who now runs the Gordian Knot Center for National Security Innovation at Stanford. So when those guys came out and they were, leaving Iraq and Afghanistan, and our country was doing such a good job leaving Afghanistan, they were coming out here to really make sure that warfighters had the most cutting edge technology. And so the way I kind of translated that was world-class talent. I think a lot of times our military and our government was going kind of lowest cost provider, which was not, it's not the way we're going to be today. It's not the way we're going to win today's wars. Like, we need to be really looking at world-class talent. And, you sit here in Silicon Valley, and you sit, or in Boston, or, down in El Segundo, where all the space stuff a lot of space stuff is going on. And you look at amazing talent, and the first place that they go when you've got an amazing, world-class talent with a world-class idea, the first place they go is to investors. And so I started talking about, to investors about this idea. And this was 7-8 years ago, when even here in the US, we'll call it defense investing or dual use investing. And we can talk more about that term whenever. They weren't focused on it. But we had a lot of great, folks retiring and kind of going into the venture space. But, it was very software here. And, while we love software and we want hardware enabled or software enabled hardware is still kind of the biggest thing. And actually, we've had a big kind of repositioning about really the importance of hardware, whether we're looking at shipbuilding, whether we're looking at small modular reactors, nuclear energy to power data centers, like whatever, critical minerals, like what we're ultimately, it still comes back to things you can touch and feel. So it's been interesting to watch that shift here. Also, the reason I started yelling at investors the nicest way I could do, was really about foreign direct investment. So we were seeing a lot of Chinese and a lot of Russian money. North Korea and Iran are the other two, but China and Russia are much more significant. And the money that was coming in to our venture funds. And our challenge was, so we had this thing called CFIUS, Committee on Foreign Investment in the U.S., run by Treasury, but every agency has their own kind of CFIUS folks. And my very dear, dear, dear friend Linda, who Steve knows, was the general counsel that helped set up our Defense Innovation Unit. And then she went into be the general counsel for Ellen Lord, who was our undersecretary for ANS, Acquisition and Sustainment. And then she went to OSTP at the White House, which is the Office of Science and Technology Policy. See, they're the bad. They're the worst.
Just rattle that off so
bad. No, they're so bad. But at least I know what they stand for now, because sometimes I go into a talk and I've forgotten what they mean, and then I just look stupid. So anyhow, but she was talking about, we were looking at, so Committee on Foreign Investment in the U.S., we were looking at putting companies through CFIUS review, which means they're mission critical. So I have like two buckets in my brain. I've got mission relevant and mission critical. Once you get to mission critical, those are the companies that they're going to start sticking into CFIUS review. But out of one side of their mouth, they're saying we need to make CFIUS. So our CFIUS review was not mandatory; it was voluntary. Who is going to subject themselves to that? So it wasn't helping. So they said, we need to make that stronger. We need to make it more. We need to make it mandatory. The challenge is they're saying that on one side of their mouth, the other side of their mouth, they're saying we need to move faster. And so the worst thing you can do to a mission critical company is put them in handcuffs for 9 to 12 months and stick them through CFIUS review. It's impossible. But the problem was, I've been a founder of a company, actually a critical minerals company. I had no business doing it, but here we are. The problem was that the founders of companies are trying to do everything. You've got, starting out with 5 people doing, 1,000 jobs, and then it just gets worse or better. But the challenge was no one was putting onus on the investors. And so we were all saying the companies need to fix this. The companies need to know when not to take bad money. I'm like, but the investors are the ones that are actually taking the bad money initially. So why aren't we kind of, and I say this tongue in cheek, but I live on this road where we get investors with very fancy offices. Like, these people are not hurting, right? And so how do we just start having that conversation with the investment community, starting in Silicon Valley, about acting appropriately? I mean, I started this thing called the Defense Investor Network, which I can get into, but it was like the lowest bar going into it. I said, here's kind of our mantra. It's like, I'm not asking you to do good for your country. I'm just asking you not to do bad for your country. Like, I'm not asking you to change your investment thesis. Just don't knowingly take bad money. And if you need folks from CIA or from, DIU or anybody to vet these private capital sources, like, we're standing by to do that.
That's so much in that. I want to go back to something that you mentioned really briefly, because I've heard somebody else talking about this, the Hacking for Defense that you're running.
Yeah.
Is that a program, or is that a series of programs? Is that, and what are the outcomes of that? What does that look like?
Thank you. It is honestly like one of my favorite things. that we
Mhm.
do. So it started out by mistake at Stanford, literally about 10 years. I think this is the 11th year it's happening right now. Graduate level course, 10 weeks. It started out as a spring break project.
Yep.
And they basically were saying, how do we get back to this world-class talent? How do we source problems? But like, these are not hypothetical problems. They're problems from US SOCOM's Special Operations Command, or from INDOPACOM, or from any of our forces here. And they're saying, we have this challenge, and where everyone was kind of in this mode of COTS. So, commercial off the shelf, like this idea of like, hey, can we reduce costs and get better technology by just buying stuff that's off the shelf? Fine. That works sometimes. But like, there are some of these challenges that like, sometimes they're solving a symptom of the problem instead of the actual problem. So
Yes.
happy to kind of walk through a quick one, which was kind of one of the very first ones, but I'll jump to a second one, which is Capella Space. So Capella
Yep.
Space is actually the company that's been doing all the ISR for Ukraine. And
Mhm.
they were building out kind of a small sat network, for intelligence, for reconnaissance, that sort of surveillance. Um, and they started out as a couple students at Stanford. They had they had great technology, and with, not having to go through kind of the traditional defense procurement rodeo that it is, and the length of time, like, how do we actually get that sort of capability? So what was happening is basically we were delivering, capabilities to our warfighter and to our Department of Defense. But even by the time they went through, we called a POM cycle, or program of record. So by the time it was going through that cycle, which is a 3 to 5 year cycle, everything they were getting was outdated. So we said, you know what, if we've got these real problems, why don't we have some really brilliant students work on them? So we've got,
Yeah.
obviously, it's actually run through the School of Engineering at Stanford, so it's got
Yes.
engineering, business, law, policy, like all of these teams come together, and it's amazing to watch. And I'll tell you a little bit. So the basically at this point now, teams of 4 or 5 students will come and actually pitch to get in the class. It's completely oversubscribed at Stanford. We're now at about 70 universities here in the US. I know that we did one at New South Wales. I know that we've done a couple in the UK as well.
Did you say 70 universities are doing this?
70, yeah. So you've got MIT, Carnegie Mellon, Georgetown, like really great schools. And you've got, between 10 and 12 teams, like for each one. And so basically a lot of what the work that we do is we curate the problems. So we're out there,
Yeah.
I personally don't do it because it's really hard. But
Yeah.
going and working with our customers, all of BMT's customers are inside DoD or IC. So all of our customers, we don't work with companies on the outside, although that's changing. But all of our customers are folks inside the Pentagon or, down in Virginia, that are sending us these problem statements. So we're kind of pulling it back. So I'll give you an example. And before I do that, like, it's really interesting watching world-class talent fail,
Mm.
because, and we don't let them fail. We do let them fail. But like, the challenge is, it's interesting being a Stanford student, being an MIT student, and
Yeah.
it's kind of a reverse classroom. So it's not a lecture. Like, basically, you get the problem statement. You have a problem owner who is somebody, decently high level, a J6, or, or something like inside of our military, who is then going to constantly connect you with folks. I ended up getting connected usually kind of early, because then I connected with a lot of commercial side folks.
Yep.
But then they are constantly, so they do about 100 interviews in 10 weeks, which is insane. So it's constantly
Yeah.
like talking to the warfighter, finding out, are we solving the right problem? Is this a problem that you're experiencing? What are the nuance? There's so much nuance in defense. There's so much nuance in
Mm.
everything. But how we think of things in the commercial sector and in like kind of normal life is not typically how things actually work in there. So we had one team that the problem statement was they were working with Navy SEALs, and the Navy SEALs, there'd be 2 of them in this. It wasn't this big, it's very big, like kind of a
Yes.
small little 2-man submarine. And the challenge is like the SEALs were experiencing kind of higher than normal just health impacts, kind of like it was just really challenging for them. And like, these guys are like peak condition, like all the things.
Yep.
And nobody could kind of figure out why. And they realized
Sure.
their GPS would only, you get to a certain depth and it wouldn't work anymore. So they would start to surface. And so, but the problem is that the wear and tear on the human body from going up and down, the equilibrium and just all of that is way worse, apparently. And so they're like, okay, we're going to slap, like week 1, the students were like, this is great. We're going to come with something like, let's slap like a Fitbit or like an Apple Watch or something on there, just so that we can like watch all of their
Check data. Yeah.
Right. Every single Navy, so they're like, we got this. Like week 2, they're like, we got this, piece of cake, no problem. Every single Navy SEAL that they then did interviews, they're like, I'm not wearing that. And they're like,
Yeah.
why? They're like, because I'm never going to wear something that's going to tell my commander that I'm not fit to do this job. So screw that. I'm taking it off and throwing it away. Like, they'll throw into the ocean. And like, they were very honest about that. And we're like, so this poor team of these amazing students, grad level, these were
Mm.
Stanford students, were like in this like deep depression by like week 4. And they're like, we got to think of something else. Like what?
Yeah, but this is it, right? This is exactly what happens. This is exactly what happens. This is what the whole validation process is. And if you cannot speak to the customer, and these
Exactly.
customers are a bit more challenging, and even getting access to them is even more challenging than any normal scenario.
They're
But the
painfully
fact that
honest.
they're getting to work with Navy SEALs, though, that's huge for them.
We've taken students, all over the world, to be honest, like to be on base or to go, to where their end user is. And you're exactly right. And these guys are insanely honest because they're like, we're not wearing that crap. Like, why would,
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, they figured out that they created like this little kind of floatable antenna whenever they, instead of the little submarine going to the surface, they just released the antenna, got their GPS, got their coordinates, got their location, and then pulled the antenna back down. So it solved all the problems. And like they literally went and got it prototyped and built it and sold it to the Navy SEALs. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not a silly one. It's an important one. But like from there, just the teams that have and what they've built have come out of it is really incredible.
So what is there any case studies or stories where those ideas have actually gone and been implemented and
So that's
been
yeah.
funded back? Yep.
So that's one. Capella Space is another one. I think they've raised about $200 million. They've raised some crazy amount of money. It's out of each class, out of each school, each program, kind of each semester. There's usually one team that's kind of a ringer, one team that's just killing it. There's usually one other team that's kind of a we'll see. And it really
And what's the what is the traits of that team that usually is the one that is killing it? Is there a standout founder quality, or is it more to do with their willing to just keep iterating?
I think that's it, honestly. And I think you get a team that kind of comes into the classes, again, graduate level, that thinks that like, and that's kind of for a reason. We've done a couple universities with undergraduate, but the problem is that's a lot harder. Like if we get a good team and a good product, we want them, they're graduating, we want them to be able to go out and start this. And so I think it's just like, if they kind of come in thinking like, we could do this, like, and we could make this a company. I think it is a bit of a predetermined mindset. I don't know. That would be a great data point though, to ask some of the teams on kind of because there are some teams that they're okay, but I think also some of them are getting really insanely hard problems. And so even if they don't come up with a full-time absolute solution, even just the data they're collecting, the interviews they've done, like there was a couple teams that have done work on critical minerals. I mean, that's not something you solve in 10 weeks, right? Like how to and so, but even, I was able to meet with the teams and to get that information. I'm doing a lot of work around critical minerals with our Deputy Secretary of Defense. And like, even just getting that information and then talking to those student teams saved me hundreds of hours of data gathering and of building. So even if it doesn't make that company.
Sorry. I was just going to say, is this a funded project? Are universities paying to play? Are they taking, because working with universities, I don't know how it is in the States, in Australia, can get tricky in terms of ownership of IP. Yeah. It's sort of slowly unpacking. Some of them do it better than others in understanding who has ownership over that and supporting the founders to either go and commercialize an idea. Do you hit those same sort of barriers with US universities?
We've got certain, I mean, Stanford's amazing. Stanford realized like we'd rather have 1% of everything than, 20% of nothing. Like, so that, I mean, that goes back to like when Google was founded. Stanford's just kind of good at it. CMU, Carnegie Mellon does a good job with it. There's a few universities, but no, it's still kind of a pain in the ass. But, if you get kind of like a faculty champion that will really go to bat, kind of the whole premise of the program is like, if this works, like we have to take this. And if the university wants a percentage, like we can negotiate that, no problem. But like, this isn't just for shits and giggles and like to make, a new better search engine. This is for, something that we need. So I will say this, my favorite data point though of Hacking for Defense, and we've actually built out this great alumni network. So as we're expanding to other countries, to go through Hacking for Defense and then to come back and actually have an alumni network of other top tier innovators who care about national security. I mean, that's an instant gold mine. My favorite thing is when the first class, I think people took it because it was at the right time and they needed a class. I don't even know why they took it. But we asked, the class, like, what percentage of you or how many of you have ever considered going to national security, joining the military, for us, in our case, going to Washington, D.C. and working in Congress. And it was like, I don't know, like 7%. And at the end of the class, it was 93%.
That's massive.
Because they realize like you don't have to go and enlist and wear a uniform. You don't have to move to Washington, D.C. and sit on Capitol Hill and bang your head against a wall. Been there personally. Like it was more like, how are we enabling and educating students and now, entrepreneurs and new professionals to understand that like they can really impact the national security need all, but working in the private sector. And hopefully, I mean, that's where the term dual use kind of comes up. There is, kind of defense first. And more we're seeing that. We're seeing a little bit of divergence from the dual use concept, and we can talk about that. But at the same time, if you're doing cyber, if you're doing AI, all of our best cyber comes from the financial services sector. Let's be real. They've been getting hit for way longer, way before, because it was money. It gets stolen. It's great. Yeah. So anybody on cyber that wasn't working in financial services, we're like, meh. But like, it's interesting to watch what's happening and how much more now. I mean, 8%, 7 years ago, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, when I started the Defense Investor Network, $7.6 billion of US dollars in private capital were being spent on defense. Today, in 2025, the end number just for 2025 was $76 billion. So that's a 10, yeah, $76 billion. And that's a 10x. And now with our defense budget.
What was the period of time? 10x in what period of time?
7 years.
7 years.
2018 to 2025, which is nuts. It's insane.
Yeah.
But then, now we've got, now our defense budget, in theory, just doubled, right? Which is a total insanity, but great. I mean, the market has gotten bigger. And something that I've really worked on our military and our government is to speak in market terms. So the private capital folks talking a total addressable market, serviceable addressable market. So I jokingly call it the military addressable market, the MAM, because I'm a chick and I think it's funny.
It doesn't translate here in Australia. The MAM bit doesn't quite work.
Well, we'll figure it out. We will figure out a solution to that. We'll figure it out.
We need something that translates because I like it. You mentioned the defense procurement rodeo, which is usually about 3 to 5 years. I feel like we do talk about this a lot, but there's always so many people who don't quite understand why is it a rodeo? Why does it take so long? And
rodeo is my new favorite word for it, because I just feel like it's a rodeo. So defense procurement, I'll go back a little bit. It's just been a long process, and I'll be really honest. And our dear friend Sean Singleton's here, and if he wants to pipe up, I welcome that. But I think for a long time, the primes, so we have, our primes, old primes or primes, and then we have what we call we lovingly call them neo primes, which is Anduril, Palantir, SpaceX. But the regular primes, the Lockheed Martins, the Raytheons, the Boeings, those sorts, honestly, they control the process for a very long time, and they're really good at things taking a really long time to keep new innovation and to keep their contracts coming. And I don't say that to shame them at all. Like they are important to us. Like I don't mind working with them. They're great, actually. The head of Lockheed Ventures is a very, very dear friend, and he's done great work to make them more agile and to work with companies. But for a long time, if you built something that a prime could then acquire you for, basically they would steal your IP. And but if they had the contract, and then they bring you in as what's called a subcontractor, they would basically take most of the value of the contract. So you were getting paid barely. Like you weren't, it wasn't kind of a Silicon Valley, equity kind of situation where there's a hockey stick. It was just like, we'll pay you for what we're buying, but that's kind of it. So any true value was going to the prime. It's
not very incentivized.
It was completely unincentivized. And the fact that then a lot of times that the prime would then basically just steal the IP. I mean, I shouldn't say that. It was better than that.
Yes, you can say that. You can totally say that.
No, but it wasn't, there was no incentive, right? And so that's kind of why the Palantirs and the Andurils got set up, because they're like, we're doing this. Like, if we want to actually achieve value and become $1 billion company or more, we're going to have to do this on our own in some way, shape, or form. So it was interesting to watch that happen over the last really decade. I mean, Palantir's only been, I think they're like 15 years, I think. But they were, there's another funny thing though, is like those three companies have something in common, is they've all sued the US government over a variety of things. So we're trying to remove that roadblock where you don't have to sue the federal government in order to
make progress.
Right. It's kind of a roadblock. So, but it's been interesting. So we've got our SIBRs, our Small Business Innovation Research Grants, and our SITRs. We call them SIBRs and SITRs. That just got re-upped. The thing I don't like about SIBRs and SITRs is they are not open to allied countries. It's US only. So that's one thing I think is a huge oversight. And so that's kind of phase one.
You think that will ever change?
Well, we kind of went around it. So I'll finish this and then I'll get to how we've started to change it. And so there's a phase one and a phase two. Phase one is usually about, $160,000 is nothing. Phase two is usually between $1.6 and $2 million. And then phase three is where you actually go into a contract situation where you become a program of record. But you go through that whole system there. It's not a short, I hate the word journey, but here we go. It's not a short journey. So actually, and something that Sean knows very well, so we started something called Defense Innovation Unit just over 10 years ago, DIU. And they came up with a rapid contracting vehicle called a CSO, a Commercial Solutions opening, I should know. And the funny part about it is, like, the broader term is called an ATO. It's called, an OTA, sorry. Other Transactional Authority. That's what we call it. It's super fancy. Other transactional authority. So like, instead of doing it the way we've been doing it, we're going to do it this other way. And that's very fancy. Basically, it says, how do we just get, DIU was getting contracts done in 6 weeks, 12 weeks, like ridiculously shorter periods of time. And so they were kind of built to be the front door for innovation to come into the DoD and now the DOW, which I don't like, but that's fine. Nobody else.
Actually, Sean did. He just popped a question in there.
What?
He said, how material was the DRU-X in the maturation of Anduril and some of the other dual-use unicorns?
Say again. What was the first part of that? I cut out.
How material was the DRU-X in the maturation of Anduril and some of the other dual-use unicorns?
That is a great question. I really wish Sean was on because he was actually there. I know they were supported. I don't actually know, to be honest. And I don't want to just tell you things I don't know. I know they got support from them. I know Palantir was right here in Palo Alto, and DIU is just in Mountain View, which for people who aren't familiar with California geography, it's like 15 minutes from each other. So that was intentional that they were here. I think they played a role, but I know it was those guys were kind of off to the races a bit. Like they were really, they have billionaire founders. And like, that's when you have a billionaire founder, you don't have to rely on early stage government funding nearly as much. And so, kind of what DIU represented was this rapid contracting to get government dollars into some of these companies. When you've got a billionaire founder, you get to kind of eke around that a little bit. And you're not as reliant on those early government dollars. And so, but I do know that, like I said, DIU had, provided support because, I mean, there's the money, but there's also, the rodeo that it is to go through government. So there's the dollars aside. I know that they've been instrumental, but as far as dollar amounts, I don't know those numbers.
Yeah. You mentioned there that you're sort of moving away from that dual use term. What's the thinking around that, or what are you seeing there?
Okay. I think what kind of happened was, at first government defense is saying we need to basically look at commercial technologies because they become, in the commercial sector, you have to hit a price point like that people will buy. Like in the military, they're not even allowed to make money. So like the cost of something is just so different and like what it needs to become. And so, but they thought, oh, well, if we use commercial products, then the price has already gotten to a point. So it was more of like a cost thing also, but also it's been proven out. If it's been proven out to be successful in the commercial sector, it must be pretty good because the commercial sector is kind of brutal. Like if your stuff doesn't work, no one's going to buy it, right? Not always the same in the government. And so, but I think what happened is we were saying, dual use, which means it has both a defense application and a commercial side application. There's a lot of stuff that we're looking at right now and everything that Ukraine's using and everything that we're looking at, anything that's kinetic, like hypersonics, like a lot of these things just really don't have a commercial use. Or if they do, it is definitely not the first use of it. Like, I mean, this is a very horrible and dated example. I apologize, but like GPS is a great example. That was a government built entity and the government used it and the military used it for quite some time. Now, all of a sudden it's, not all of a sudden it's been around for a long time. Now, obviously it's very well versed in the commercial sector, but like it was defense first. And so I think a lot of the things that we're looking at on the software side, like cyber, all that was commercial first. And that's fine. That's great. And like, if it created, I shouldn't say Chinese walls, that's terrible. But if it kept, adversaries from breaking in, to banks and to, that sort of thing, then it's proven. That's great. Let's use it. But other than that, like on the hardware side and the stuff we're looking at, I mean, drones, like, unless you're like a real estate agent using them to take pictures of houses, there's a lot of drone use that's outside government or defense at this point. And then obviously hypersonics is, it's not like commercial sector people are out there buying them. So I just think this mentality though of defense first and not to be closed off to commercial opportunities, but like I think we were waiting for the commercial side for a lot of these things to kind of take off, and we don't have time for that anymore.
No, but do you think it's also to do with timing? So obviously, things have changed from let's just say in the last 5 years. I think it's more common knowledge, even in all the different areas of business and commercialization, that there is specific applications for defense and there's commercial realities of that. They don't need to go and prove themselves somewhere else, like you mentioned, for all the reasons why they should have. But we need them faster. So the loop of innovation is closing much faster simply because we need to deploy faster.
I think it is. Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe more people are more comfortable. Like there's a level of comfort with saying defense first.
I mean, that, I've got some colleagues on this call, like that's been a lot of it. And I think socializing the concept and like, I used to use the words national security all the time. That it was kind of like national resilience. I have 3 buckets. I have like national resiliency, which is a lot of the energy stuff, a lot of the climate stuff. It's a lot of the, like energy stuff, national security, which is a little bit more defense security side, more of the cyber stuff, some AI, and then defense, which is like aggressive. And you're right, and it really depends. And some, one thing we did out here was just to really understand who each investor was and what level of that they were comfortable with. Because, Steve will talk about defense all day, but there's a lot of people like, oh, I don't want to weaponize drones. You're like, what if we just don't tell you we're going to weaponize? And so, there's all these different buckets and people are comfortable with different things. But I think at the end of the day too, well, this is where my story got blown up. So I used to always say, we're the Department of Defense. We're not out there trying to start wars. So you see where my narrative has kind of gone sideways. In the Department of War is a little harder to kind of get people around. But at the end of the day, regardless sometimes of what certain people in our country are saying, we are very much looking to preserve our country, to preserve our allied countries and that sort of thing. So getting private capital into some of these companies that, yes, we are going to, some of them are aggressive, but anyone who walks around thinking that that's not what's happening, I will hold a one-on-one class on it for anybody who's interested. But I mean, that
for a little while.
That was just part of what we were talking with investors about. We're like, pull your head out of it, I'm like, this is the reality of the world. And yes, I know you're trying to become rich and do it in all your nice ways, but you know what, we all have a responsibility to play our part. And so I think that's, this is, this idea of private capital now being so relevant to national security is providing other avenues. And, another thing that I talk quite a bit about is it's not, there are people, there are deals I put in front of people, and this isn't philanthropy, but a normal return is 2 to 3x, not this 10x or 100x unicorn stuff that everyone talks about out here. I mean, that does happen. But I'm like, but we kind of, I don't even use double bottom line because everyone just kind of throws that in the philanthropy bucket because it's not. But at the same time, there are investments to be done where we really need this. And you're going to make some money and, we can help you. Probably a nice segue into the next topic, but it can help make sure that this capability that we've done all this work with warfighters and we know it's what they need can get into their hands and can get there quickly through various vehicles that we have.
Yes. I've got a question. I've got 2 questions here. I'll read out to you from the audience. One is, how can Australian startups secure DRU funding?
So
for hypersonic propulsion specifically.
Shoot, I didn't bring my book up. So I literally have a phone book. Okay. We made it. And actually Steve Blake made it. And I will put it. Is there a chat? I don't know. I can.
Oh, you can send it to me. I can distribute it to everyone who attended.
Yeah. So Steve Blank, who is the father of lean innovation, he's over at Stanford. He's actually was our kind of champion faculty member at Stanford. He's fantastic, and he is along with BM&T and American Frontier Fund, all put together. I mean, he literally put together a phone book, which is the most ridiculous thing you've ever seen. And we have an online, it's not virtually electronic copy of it that's updated constantly. So it just gives you everybody at DIU. And Owen West is the new director. Matt Shortle is a dear friend. He was a Blue Angel pilot, number 4. That's what I call him. And he's now the deputy director over there. They do change every couple of years, but he was at Andreessen Horowitz just before that. So they're bringing in people that have done this sort of investing to understand, kind of how these things all need to work. So I will share this document so you guys can use that, or just call me.
Somebody just asked, can it be shared? And I said, yeah, we will send.
Absolutely.
We've got everyone's registration details. So if you're interested, we'll send you the link. Is it a link? It's an online resource. Yep.
Yeah, I think it's a link. If not, it's a PDF. So whatever.
Okay.
It's on your phone right now.
Either way, we'll get.
And I wish I should have it. It's it's the funny. It looks like a phone.
I love it. Of course, Steve Blank created a big fat resource.
I love how he took us back to phone books because I remember 1975 when you just
look
up stuff in the phone book. And
I know how good. But it does also highlight the volume of information in something when you see it in that physical form.
Yes, I was shocked, and I bought I literally paid for my own copy off of Amazon just so you know because I wanted to see it. I sit there with my highlighter. My kids are like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, but it's weirdly therapeutic.
Kind of tell you about the brain connection to the physical act of either reading or doing or highlighting. So yes, it's.
But for me, very useful. I don't even know. I've so many friends everywhere, and people move around a lot, in the government and military. So it was just kind of nice, kind of seeing where everyone is. But I'm sure it's outdated already. I mean, I ordered it in December, but I promise you, I will get that to you, and you can share it. But at the same time, I mean, we've got some kind of key people. There's hypersonics leads, AI leads. Our space lead is a 2-star. He's freaking amazing. Bucky's been there forever. They're really good people, and they've really done a good job on getting contracts out. At the same time, they've got kind of so I helped set up the Pathways program about 10, 11 years ago. Because originally DIU was set up we're let every company that wants to talk to us and put all their information in a database. I'm like, if you see the word database one more time, like I can't deal with it. It's so outdated. So I'm like, why don't you start talking to investors? Because they see all the bleeding edge stuff. Like even before, if a company's still in stealth, they're not going to go to DIU because they're still in stealth mode. So I would go have breakfast with all these investors, and they bring out their little spreadsheets, and I bring my 2 highlighters, my mission relevant and mission critical. This is very important information, people. Get it. But then you get to the bottom of their spreadsheet, that they've printed out, which is hilarious. And I'm like, what are all these companies down here that are just like blacked out? They're like, oh, those are stealth companies. I'm like, those are the ones I need to know about.
Yeah, those ones. I want the blacked out ones.
Thank you. I don't want the ones that everyone else was. But it was, but that was,
Don't press the red button. So of course you want to press the red
I want to
button.
press the red button. Don't ask me about the blacked out ones. Then why did you put them on the list, people?
Why put them on the list?
But I think part of it though is as they are building. I mean, if it's that stealth, it means they have something good. Like
Yeah.
But like those are the ones that need to be talking to our defense
Yes.
unit. And as they're growing, especially if there's hardware and there's tooling and all that kind of thing. Like, you could be half an inch off and it doesn't work in legacy systems. So like, how do we just make sure that these, and I'll say these trusted conversations are happening. This was 7 years ago, right? So that has completely changed. And you guys, have the Defense Investor Network there. And like the whole goal of that was just to do a regular monthly meeting where it was kind of a reverse pitch. So the government people were coming and saying, these are the sorts of things we're looking for. These are the sorts of things we need. Investors, and our other mantra within the DIN was, if there's a company that you invested in, that's a good solution for something, but that there's a better company out there because maybe you kind of screwed up. We want to know what that company. It is your duty as an American.
Follow your
right, and
and
because a lot of times, many of them wouldn't. They wouldn't invest in a competing technology or competing capability. So I'm like, but I need to know. Like, this isn't about you. I'm not going to tell anyone that you sold your own company out. It's fine. But that happened over and over. And we would really get people saying, I'd get these hilarious cryptic texts. So like, check out this company. Tell me what you think. But I think it's really important. So anyway, but then again, but there's something about having good technology but there's, it comes down to the founders and it comes down to the team and their ability to iterate and pivot and grow. And so, and frankly, their ability to deal with our bullshit. Cause we're not the easiest people to work with and it sucks that way, but we're getting better. But it takes a lot of grit because there were no ideas.
Look, if for any founders, if the hardest thing, everything you just mentioned in multiple different ways is if you just have to get in front of the right people to then either be plugged into the right networks to then get to that next stage, whether it be testing or the next introductions or whatever. So I'm sure there's probably lots of questions like, how do Aussie founders get plugged into that? How do they reach out and make those connections? Because we can rattle off all of these names, we can rattle off all these organizations, but still, like, what is that? What is the actual first step?
I think
if they've listened and go, what do I do next?
I will say this, DIU. So the DIU CSO, I'd mentioned that the SBIRs, the SBIRs aren't, they're only for U.S. companies. CSOs are not. So that was a big deal that when DIU was set up, they made sure that their contracting vehicle was open to allied countries. I think they started with Five Eyes. I'm not sure how much they've expanded beyond that, but Australia, the whole point, John Leslie from Austrade is a godsend. He has come over and every DIN meeting, he's like, so what does this mean for Australian companies? Like, it's amazing. He's amazing. And so I think, that was really top of mind. And so it's been fruitful. And so like that is the CSO. That's why I'm kind of like hawking on DIU because like they are a great kind of input for Australian companies. And once you kind of get your person there, you're good. And part of their, part of their mission, they do have certain CSO offerings open, but at the same time, like they're also gathering, data about, what are the most mission critical companies that are out there. And so getting to know the right people there, things have changed a little bit. So when DIU was set up, they had a small budget, but they didn't have their own dollars to invest. And so basically they would partner with Army Applications Lab, or they would partner with SOCOM, or they'd partner with somebody else who then said, we have a need. We'd like to use your contracting vehicle. Can we play ball? DIU in the last year has gotten quite a bit of their own funding. So it's changed the game a little bit. So they have a little bit more autonomy. So just getting in getting those relationships created. Relationships do take a while to build, but that's where I would start. And then, with if we also have, we have sam.gov and we have things that are, please follow me or link in with me on LinkedIn because I don't post my opinion. I don't know, nobody cares. So I post opportunities. And so it's always just like, here are, if I see a good opportunity and I go and I try with all my little hashtags and it's just defense innovation, defense tech. Sorry, spelled with an S. Let's go with that. But how do you, just like new opportunities that are coming up, but like, check the DIU website constantly. But personally, that's where I would start. That's kind of why it was set up. But, Air Force has AFWorks, SOCOM has SoftWorks, Navy they had Naval X, and they kind of combined a bunch of offices now called NRCO, the Naval Rapid Capabilities Office. If you're doing, critical minerals work or nuclear energy work, that, our DOE, Department of Energy, just put together like $100 billion or some ridiculousness, around that. Critical minerals, Deputy Secretary of Defense's Feinberg's office is doing a lot of that work. With about $200 billion of capitals. Yes, it's confusing. I'm so sorry. It's confusing for me and I live it every day. I think, I'm very open, to answering questions, and I will definitely share the phone book. There are people out there and Sean Singleton is a great resource and knows this stuff, some of it far better than me. And so there are those of us out there that, are happy to, to take calls and I know it's impossible. Like it's
No,
not.
I mean, we have a lot of touch points, and then, we aim to also be that conduit between, people
Yeah.
here and obviously people like yourselves, and having Sean on team is amazing. We do share a lot of activities, but depending on when people come in to,
It's hard.
when we become on their radar, they might pick up different bits of information. So hence we're trying to capture as much of this, put it on YouTube, and they can watch things back and also attend events and get plugged in. But I do have a question from Judd. For Australian companies looking to establish in the US and work on DoD-related projects, what are the most effective strategies to navigate foreign ownership constraints, particularly around the FOCI and security clearances, whilst remaining competitive as a supplier?
Hi, Judd. That's a great question. We have a couple little chats, and there's some law firms that have come out with some really great information, kind of like the 7 biggest pitfalls on trying to do that. Honestly, the best thing to do is to engage with a U.S. law firm. I hate to say it that way. I won't say my favorites, but I've got those who've done a really spectacular job for companies in the past, and they're usually pretty flexible. But setting up an entity, again, it does depend on which part of the defense industry you're in. Is it software? Is it hardware? There's a lot of that. Holding clearances. I have some ideas. Definitely know places that can hold clearances and how to get, facility clearances and that sort of thing. Those are all very nuanced. And it does depend kind of on who, like, have you had a clearance in the US before? Do you have an Australian clearance? Just lots of questions. But there are, as our defense innovation industry has grown, so has the expertise of a lot of the attorneys. And some of them have set up like defense practices. And so very happy. And most of them, I'll be honest, like it was so expensive. Usually most of them will do, 1 or 2 or 3 kind of, front end calls with you just to like say, hey, is this a fit? Like Cooley is a great one. Perkins Coie is a good one that they're actually building their defense practice right now and would love to talk to folks. Pillsbury does a lot of kind of pro bono work for us and hosts a lot of events for us. And again, are building out their defense practice. And then there's some that have been around for a long time. So it's, I hate to say it, it's a bunch of lawyer stuff for the most part, but we have solutions and workarounds, and are here to help. Yeah. Doing it the right way is important. And of course, like, to become a U.S. entity, which state are you? A Delaware corporation? California? Don't be a California company. Just save yourself.
I think I've heard Sean say that so many times as well.
Say what?
Say the same thing about don't be a Californian
Don't
company.
be a California company. I love California. I'm a California native. I've been in California like most of my life. It's just not worth it.
Yeah. Amen. Saying amen. Another question here from Justin. Prior to making an approach to DIU, what due diligence preparation should an Australian companies do? If we had our DISP, Defense Industry Security Program accreditation, does that help at all? Does it help break in?
What is the DISC? Sorry?
If we had our DISP, Defense Innovation Security Program accreditation, I don't actually know the details of what level that comes to. Have you got any more context there, Justin? Maybe you want to add more to the question.
I can see the chat. Now I can see the chat.
Oh, yeah. I thought you should have been able to see it there.
I don't think I can I? Oh, wait, maybe I can. Hang on. I'm cluing into life. Hang on. Oh, there we go. Chat. Pretty making person do you
It's more of will any level of security translate an Australian version to US, or does it always need to be US?
Got it. My understanding is that there's a lot of leniency between Five Eyes. So a lot of that does translate. But again, I don't want to misspeak. But the right thing is, the person at DIU is going to know that. They're going to know exactly what you have, what you need. I would say this, I think a lot of people over prepare. This sounds terrible, but like kind of over prepare before reaching out. Like this needs to be perfect. It doesn't. just start talking to the people. Cause like
And
you
then work
might,
it out as you go.
exactly. And like, there's going to be hints along the way and there's going to be relationships they can help build. And so, instead of thinking you have to come here and like have your best, put your best foot forward, like if you've got something good that we need, they'll figure it out. Like, so I think I know that's a very broad statement right there. And how do you find out what we need? So hence hacking for
Yeah.
defense. But I think, my suggestion would be reach out and get that point of contact sooner than later and start asking these
Mm.
questions versus, establishing everything and going through everything and being so prepared because it's never going to be totally right. Like, even if they're going to have you change it. So just start earlier that's my
Yeah.
best
I think
advice.
also because we've spoken to this for our own to get our own team members um, here in Beaten Zone. So there's cost involved, there's a process you need to go through, but I think all of those things would equate to proving that what you're aiming to do and how committed you are to it. So it might be a cost prohibitive thing for some people in the beginning, but then again, it's also a commitment to where you want to be heading. So I don't think any of it's bad. I don't think any of it won't translate.
It's
It
definitely
definitely
an
highlights.
indicator. It's definitely is an indicator, but like if you're a team that has something that's really, really valuable and you don't want to spend $200,000 on going through all the legal stuff and everything, we can help. Like let's get in touch with the right people and see is this worth all that work or what, kind of get some color around it. Would be my best advice. Because I've seen people, but I mean US companies do it too. They're like, we're gonna make this perfect, and then it's not what anyone was actually looking for. So I mean, I
Yeah.
touched a company the other day. So they're doing a big drone dominance thing here, and we had like 100 companies, and that got whittled down to 25, and they all did a big push, and then they got whittled down to 11. It's supposed to be 10, and it's 11. But some of the companies who didn't get picked, I mean, they spent so much time and effort, going through this process without really actually talking to the folks
Mm.
that were going to potentially be buying it. So, and I will say this, like, because I say buying, so one thing I really, again, I'm a big DIU fan if you can't tell, but like, we've got, so you've got the provider and then you've got the end user, right? The warfighter. And then what we lovingly call the frozen middle. So those are our procurement people. And so and it can be challenging because a lot of them aren't motivated to do things, quickly and to provide that sort of help. So DIU was also built to help circumvent some of that and to make sure that companies with bleeding edge, with mission critical capabilities, are getting the right advice and the right information. And timing, I will say this though, negative on us, but like, yes, some of it has to do with timing. If there just isn't a CSO for something that you're doing, that kind of sucks sometimes. Or I get calls like, "It closed 2 weeks ago." I'm like,
Yeah.
"What you gonna do?" So we're trying. I think DIA is doing a much better job now than they used to about like getting the information out. But keep an eye on their website. I do try to repost a lot of it. So, definitely connect with me, connect with Sean. We're trying to get that information out. But it's, I don't know. If we're sending it to you, then China sees it too. So
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly right. The other thing is, there's always so much to do for founders. They are juggling multiple things with growing companies, expanding teams, dealing with internal people issues, got their own tech, and then constantly maybe looking at LinkedIn to pick up the latest bit of information. Right? So it's more of
hire an
a
intern to
resource
start
challenge.
me. Yeah, just get an intern to start me in this and the DIU website.
Program some really good AI to help feed you the information you need to be seeing each day.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of things. I'm conscious of time and I don't want to run over, but you mentioned two things that I want to just finish on. You framed it earlier on, and that is we all have a sense of responsibility. Now, this is something that I know Steve mentions a lot here. He's probably the only one really saying it in that way. Culturally, I think Australia could do with hearing it a lot more in terms of we have a sense of responsibility and how do people get involved from all different angles. This isn't just founders and it's not just investors. So we've got a sense of responsibility to come together and make things work. Is there anything that we can do culturally help share that to bring more people into this discussion?
Yeah. I mean, I joke about it, but like I talk about it all the time. And, people, and I'm not scary and I'm not, some Marine, some general who is, out there. Like I'm me and I'm a mom but I talk about defense all the time. And I'm sure some of my
Yeah.
friends wish I would stop. But, and when I'm with investors and I think just talking about the security of your nation and not using euphemisms, like for a long time, people are like, oh, we have adversaries. I'm like, it's China. Just say it. Like it's China or and I know people, there's always been this, it's one of those topics you don't talk about at dinner. You don't talk about politics. You don't talk about this. Screw it. Like, what's going on around right now is incredibly political. And I don't even consider myself like US, like political anymore. It's national security. And like, that's not a red or a blue or Democrat or Republican thing anymore. And so I don't think it's taboo. I think it's just something that people need to understand and need to be more familiar with. And we're watching, what's going on with Israel and Iran, and we're watching with, about the Straits. Gas at my local gas station is $8 right now, for like in dollars in a gallon, like, which for us is a lot.
Yeah.
I know we're not like totally like you guys in Europe with her, but it's a lot for us. And so, it's affecting everybody. Like, it's not just,
Yeah.
it's not just affecting soldiers. And now, there's different countries right now that are talking about drafts and like drafting people,
Mm.
militaries, and like, that's real people. Those are like real lives. Right. And like,
Mm.
and we can kind of pretend it's not going on, but it's going on. And I think the more that we just normalize being able to talk about these things, being educated about them, knowing what information is real, anytime you're there with data. And so now it's at the point where like people will, I do get kind of sick of it sometimes, because now people just ask me if I've kind of avoided dinner parties lately because I just end up talking about work the whole time. But at the same time, like, I'm really excited that people are interested in it. And, I'm also not like shoving it down their throats. I'm not, but it's just like what's going so my oldest daughter just went on she's going to college next year, and she just went on her spring break trip to Puerto Vallarta. Well, 4 weeks ago, before she went, so I guess 5 weeks ago, muck and drug cartels were lighting it on fire. That's fun. And then my other daughter was supposed to go to Israel with her grandparents. And I'm like, it's affecting people's normal lives. And
Yeah.
we were on these parent chats about, should we let our kids go to Puerto Vallarta? Should we let our
Mm.
kids go? And it just kept coming back to me. Yes, I can call people. I can find out what's going on. We decided that as long as they stayed at the Hard Rock Resort and they didn't leave, that it was probably pretty safe. Like, these are ridiculous conversations to be having with, like a bunch of like high school senior parents, but like, it's becoming everyday life. As much as we like that or hate it. It's real. And I think that, more people can be knowledgeable about it. Not talking in a spastic way or, like a fear mongering way. I don't talk about it like that at all. But at the same time, I'm also like, one of my
You have
daughters,
information.
just,
You have insight.
have insight. But then also find out, like, what are you guys building? What sorts of, I mean, I live in the center of like entrepreneurism, and like anytime I go out, I'm like, oh my, so one of my daughter's best friend's dads is the head of one of the heads of SRI. It used to be called Stanford Research Institute, but they do a ton of stuff on national security. Siri is called Siri because it was built at SRI. They just added an I in the middle. And so it's crazy, right? And we started talking about it, and I'm like, I didn't even know you did this. And he's like, I didn't know you did this. And so you find your people, like when you're talking about whether you let your kids go to, to Mexican drug cartel burn places. But it's just becoming more normal. And I think it actually is more normal than most people realize. But again, back to those, those taboo topics. You don't talk about religion, you don't talk about politics, right? We have to talk about politics, and we have to talk about religion,
Yeah.
and we have to talk about war. Like, we
Yeah.
just do.
Yeah.
It's not fun and it's not pretty, but we can do a lot better, I think, if we're all supporting it and just, have a bit of an understanding about it.
Yeah. Agree. And last question is, I mean, you get to sit across on our, investment committee and get to look at Aussie founders a lot. What are 3 things that you wish Australian founders would do more of or less of?
This is my favorite question of the whole thing. First of all, I've been incredibly impressed with the technology that of the deals that you guys that we're looking at. Truly, the one thing is, oh, it was that's a
Oh,
big.
no, sorry. That's just a question popped up. Don't worry about that. That was the old first one.
You guys don't brag about yourselves enough. You're too modest.
Well, we do. Well, this is not the first time you said it. So unleash.
I told you this before. U.S. investor or U.S. founders. I mean, they talk about a total addressable. They talk about addressable markets. They talk about what part of it they think they can capture. It is best case scenario, and half of it's bullshit. But every investor here knows that. So when you guys come in with like actual real numbers, it pales in comparison. I'm so sorry to say that, and I can help you, bullshit if you need to. And you're not. But
So
you're not.
we need to deliver the numbers and add a bit of bullshit.
It's best case scenario. So feel
Okay.
free to offer your best case scenario. But then when you're in a meeting, be like, this is where we are. This is the addressable market. This is the percentage of the market we think that we can capture. This percentage we've already captured. But like, be a little optimistic.
Excited?
And don't be so modest and brag about yourselves a little bit. Like, talk about your team and talk about that, this is game changing. And because they do it here. I try not to bullshit and embellish. I try to like keep things pretty straight and pretty like honest, but I'm a crazy optimist. And so, yeah, part of optimism is like, you're manifest, you're making it real. So I think
Painting a version of the future that's you really want to happen.
that's it. You know what? Yes, that is such a better way to say that. Just like, what is the vision that you have? Be really optimistic. Go in there with so much energy and just like, this is what we think. This is what we believe we can build. This is what we're building. Actually, don't even say this is what we believe. This is what we're building. This is what we're doing.
Yeah.
We need your help to do it. And yeah, just go in there with some chutzpah and don't be modest. Like, don't, like, this is not a place and a time for modesty. Sorry.
No, I agree. I'm glad you said it just like that. It's not the first time anybody would have heard this, but we need to keep saying it on repeat for
I've
sure.
heard it. I've
Absolutely.
heard it more from your companies, like
Yes.
Amen on California. So I've heard it more like, oh, we don't want to, we don't want to. I'm like, oh no, 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 no. So
And then
I mean, welcome back to the rodeo.
yeah,
Philosophy.
back to the rodeo.
Just go
Get
big
back on the horse.
rodeo.
Yes.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
everything.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, just go big or go home. Oh, go big.
That is perfect place to end this discussion. Thank you so much, Heather. It's been a ride. We've touched on so many things. I can't wait to get the transcript so I can pull out the key bits of information because the amount of acronyms that you rattled off there. And no, it's good. It's good because this is the language. It is the language that more people need to understand if they haven't already. I know so many people. I'm speaking to the converted here already well across it, but we can never say it enough times. I'm sure everyone else appreciated it. Thank you again for your time. And this will be up on recording. More than happy for you to share it if anyone wants the resource as well.
Amazing. And to anyone here, there are those of us like anytime, like truly, if you've got another group of people, small, big, I don't care. Like I'm happy to jump on the phone anytime and just answer questions. And I will be sending you the phone book. So you're going to get that. It's an amazing resource. It's really long. So just if you need some shortcut, it's just like, but just start looking at DIU and it's got, the different people there and it's got their email addresses and sometimes it's got phone numbers, sometimes it has cell phone numbers. But if there's somebody you're really trying to track down, people here use LinkedIn a lot. People in America in Silicon Valley use it quite a bit. If you don't have a LinkedIn, you kind of don't exist. Sorry. And, a lot of people, I'm actually better on LinkedIn than I'm on email, which is really embarrassing to admit, but it's true.
Yeah, that's true. I have got more better response from you.
So I think just finding those people, here's my thing about LinkedIn. People will like connect with you and they'll do like a little message. Don't send me your deck. Like, don't do too much. Just like a few key points, keep it short, keep it sweet. If you have somebody in common, if they have a mutual connect, mention that person, even if they're not going to call the person and check in on it. So it doesn't matter. But just be like, oh, yeah.
Also, points of references like I watched you on the Beaten Zone, Breach Point webinar. You said reach out to me. Like even that, be that specific to people. Because then you will know the type of conversation that they would have heard and there's some context.
Exactly. Give them some context. Hit me up. I'll do my best. It's usually what I do between 11 and 12 o'clock at night, which I guess is what time your time. It's probably like a perfect time actually. But there are if you're working on something that's really amazing, just, I think the other thing, and I'll stop, but just, there are some people that are working on really incredible defense things. And then once in a while I'll get like, hey, we made a dog food that is going to really help the canine, so I'm like, no. So no, sorry, like just be a little realistic about, it. Yes, I'm sure on some planet there is a national security relevance.
Clear is kind. Clear is kind.
Clear is kind.
You get a quick no better than a very, very slow, painful yes.
Yes, exactly. Anyway, thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure. But like there are, we really do care about our allied countries. And like I said, the stuff that I've seen coming out of Australia is incredible. You guys do think differently than us in some ways, and we need that. Like we don't know everything, obviously. So don't think that a US company is better than you. Don't think they have something that's better. Don't think they have something that's faster. Like, don't be modest. There you go.
We will take that on board. Thank you. I'll chat to you later.
Thanks,
Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye.